Back on NBC 10 at Issue, our inspector was our guest 2 weeks ago, Joe Sestak the week before. This morning, Pat Toomey is here. Let's pick up where we left off on entitlement. So you have a responsibility to people who are at or near. What do you do going forward about Medicare and Social Security? Third rails. Nobody's want to touch it. The president talks about reform, and people,
Well, actually, I've been talking about reforming the Social Security program for 12 years, including all 3 terms when I served in the House. And what I think we really need to do is give younger workers a choice. Say, you can participate in the current program if you like, but if you prefer, we'll give you a different option within Social Security. We'll create a reform whereby you can take a portion of the payroll tax that you currently send to Washington and actually save and invest that money. So that'd be yours. Well, let's look at that. I'm glad you raised that. So let's look at this.
Not if I was retiring yesterday.
Let's look at this. I'm 48 years old. When I got out of college and first started working full-time, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was about 1,000. Today we're still in the midst of one of the worst recessions, well, the worst recession since the Great Depression. The Dow's at 10,000. So any money that I would have been able to put in, or anybody my age, over the course of these decades, the vast majority of those investments would have been very, very positive in terms of their return. The other thing that we would certainly do is require professional management, require diversification. And you'd have a portfolio. I mean, I think it would only make sense to have a portfolio designed to evolve over a person's lifetime so that as they approached retirement age, the investment composition would be primarily very safe instruments for capital preservation, like treasury bonds, CDs, and cash, so that someone who's about to retire is not subject to a big fluctuation in the stock market. That kind of system, it relieves the fact that this is a program is fundamentally insolvent for the government, but more importantly, it creates ownership rights for every individual worker. A person would retire with savings that they own. It would be inheritable in the case of someone passing away, which Social Security benefits are not now, and it would offer better returns than what the taxes do today.
Back next time, maybe we can devote a little bit more time to that. That's interesting. No, it really is. It's important to talk about. Yeah. The national debt ceiling was just increased by 1.9 trillion. You would have been against that? Or is it necessary?
Well, it's the thing that we should have done is taken the opportunity. You have to honor the debt. You have to honor your obligations as a country. Absolutely.
So because we did the spending of the last year.
But the point is, that cuts both ways. That means they need a vote to pass. And so what we should do is use that as an opportunity to put some spending discipline in place, to have some cuts in spending like Tom Coburn proposed. Cuts in spending where we can, put some caps on growth, use that as the opportunity to begin to get this massive deficit under control. And I think they missed that opportunity.
Was the president honest in his speech?
Oh, I don't think the president was dishonest in his speech. I think the president went off on the wrong path several times, but I'm not aware of any cases of actual dishonesty.
Criticism of the Republicans in recent years has fallen along at least this one line, which is that they look in Congress to be the party of no. That they say, no, 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 don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but what do they stand for? Because there are still problems that Americans want solved.
Yeah.
Do you think that's still a problem with who is currently in Congress in the Republican Party?
Well, I don't want to speak for people who are, for other people, but I know that I have consistently advocated for alternative policies. I haven't just said no. I do say no to a lot of what's been happening in Washington, but I've also advocated what I believe in. For instance, with health care. Joe Sestak and I did an hour-and-a-half-long televised debate in Allentown where we had a town hall forum. We took unscripted, unprepared questions from the audience, and we did that. Now,
would you get into the Senate? If you got into the Senate, would you go to your Republicans who have been there longer than you as a U.S. Senator and say, stop what you're doing? If you can't support the president, come up with something else that you're going to push for that will still solve the problem.
Well, I'm going to go one step further than that. I'm going to go to everybody and say, hey, can't we all agree that individuals ought to be able to deduct the cost of health insurance premiums just as employers can? That's not the case today. Let's change the law so that it's more affordable for individual workers to go out and buy their own policy. Let's change the law so that insurance companies can compete across state lines so that Pennsylvania families will have hundreds of plans to choose from rather than just a couple.
Well, we might not want the Alabama plan.
And you wouldn't. I would never force you to take it. That's the thing, Steve. But I think it's perfectly okay for you to decide.
The Alabama plan may not pay for that test that I thought I was going to get.
And why
costs money.
And why shouldn't Pennsylvania families decide whether they want an inexpensive plan that maybe doesn't have all the frills, or a more expensive plan that'll cover everything they could ever want? That, I think, should be left up to individuals and consumers.
More with former Congressman and now Senate candidate Pat Toomey in a moment. You're watching. Back with Pat Toomey. We're talking about the economy mainly, but there are a couple of other issues that are floating around out there that are important to some people that get talked about anyway. CBS is apparently has made the decision not to bow to pressure, and they're going to allow the Tim Tebow ad that Focus on the Family is asking to be run during the Super Bowl to run. What do you think of that?
I don't see why you can't run an ad like that. I think it's perfectly fine to run that ad. I think it's better that they run it.
The network is now dealing with another issue, whether or not an ad by a dating service that happens to be a gay dating service wants to put an ad on, and CBS has said at this point that it doesn't know whether to get that ad on. Is this stuff that should be left entirely up to the network, or should public pressure be involved with this?
Well, you know, at some point, I think the broad sense of the public ought to have some say on it. You know, a lot of kids are watching TV at times, and that's why we have, you know, all kinds of regulations now on what can be broadcast over the airwaves. I think it's appropriate to have some limits.
The latest criticism on another subject from you comes from the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. It basically says your record when you're in Congress is not what you say it is, that you voted for all the Bush budgets and that sort of thing. Final word?
Final word is I defy them to find somebody who is a more consistent advocate for taxpayers, for limited government, cutting wasteful spending, and keeping the burden on taxpayers as modest as it can be. I think I was a champion for those causes when I was in the House, and my record shows it.
Toomey, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Again, for being here. Thank you. And we expect you back, if you can, in the weeks and months ahead.
Look forward to it.
That's it for this edition of NBC 10 Edition. I'm Steve Highsmith. Thanks for joining us. May you have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Thank you.